All right, welcome to another morning of prayer and stories. And today we have Jim Wellman. And next week, little shout out for a friend of Jim, a friend of ours for a long, long time. I actually met him years ago through the fellowship, David Woodward, who ran an international education business or organization for a long, long time. And just this spring was recruited to join Seattle University. So this week we have a professor from UW. Next week, the senior advisor for global engagement at Seattle University. And the great title, and I think it lets David Woodward do what he loves to do anyway, which is travel and talk to people and make connections. And he told me he's got stories about interfaith dialogue, and he was raised in Iran, fluent in Persian, and loves talking to people of other faiths too about the faith. His parents were missionaries. So that'll be next week. So Jim, come on back and listen to Dave. But today, very happy to have Jim back. He joined us. I was looking back in our calendars. It was a September 2 years ago, so almost 2 years. And Jim came on and told us about his life being upended and then almost replanted by God and the miracles there, family-wise. I won't spend time on his long bio, but he's written a bunch of books. He was ordained. If you're once ordained, are you always ordained?
Yeah, sometimes I wonder. I think
ordained
so.
In the
yeah, that's a question I scratch my head over sometimes.
Okay. Presbyterian Church, we have other folks here in that ilk, and a lot of books, and he and I share a love for the German Saint Dietrich Bonhoeffer. We talked about that a little earlier this week. And so, yeah, he's coming back to share. He does have, I hope you talk about your rules of life worth living. He's been around the community here sharing those things, and get into personal. So we're just sharing stories here. You don't have to make a lecture or sermon out of it. But how's your life going? How's your life worth living? How's God in your life? Happy to have you here, brother.
Thank you, man.
Take it away.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. I just went through the surgery to cut off my ability to reproduce.
Whoa.
And
Right.
In fact,
are you still on those drugs?
I'm not, but I want to be.
We had a very funny conversation a few days ago.
Sorry. Yeah, kind of. There were some complications, and I'm just feeling kind of semi-normal right now. So I'm not real happy with my doctor, to be honest. I was just thinking, I got up this morning, I thought, wow, I do not trust that guy. Anyway, that's another story. I'm doing okay though. It was necessary. But it's in terms of my kind of my spiritual life, my spirit life, my church life, wow, really complicated, I would say. I married my first wife and came out of Princeton Seminary and got into the church and became a youth pastor, and was really at the heart of the liberal Protestant movement at that time, and kind of saw myself in that, very much in that kind of tradition. And as I've lived, these decades, and my wife passed in 2013, and a lot of things have changed. There's a lot of transition there, both emotionally and physically, obviously, but also religiously. And I I don't feel as connected to the liberal Protestant tradition as I once did. And, that's something I'm just trying to figure out myself. And interestingly enough, in the process of doing my research on evangelicals and liberals and writing a book literally comparing the two, and I've done that multiple times, I found that evangelicals, empirically do more service to their community than the liberals do. And it was not what I expected to find. And I think liberals take great pride in their service to the community, and I think they should. But their critique of evangelicals, I think, has missed the mark. And so, this is a funny thing. This is both. It's funny that scholarship can affect your personal life. And after my first wife passed, I realized that evangelicalism was a place that I could find some solidarity. And lo and behold, I met at a bar a woman who turned out to be part of the evangelical church, Bethany Community Church. Fell in love quickly, and we got married, and so I'm married to an evangelical, and that has been kind of one of the great blessings of my life. And I think I'm a person who enjoys the possibility of understanding different faith systems and going outside what I've always done, and experiencing the refreshment of, speaking, you guys are obviously Christians, so I can speak in this language, but that the Holy Spirit moves where it will, right? Nobody's controlling it, and nobody owns it. And so it's been kind of a stunning revelation in my life that we're going to Crosstown right now on Bainbridge Island, which is a more conservative church, and I never would have thought I would go there. So it's a funny. I'm in a place that I can't quite understand myself, and just being led by the Spirit, and fully in love with family, fully in love with my young children, fully thinking that, wow, the power of being a parent, the power of being a family. I think that's really been lost in much of our liberal culture. And so that's taken me in a different direction. And I told Beth that I'd talk a little bit about Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And I know that I am a Christian because of him and because of his witness. And so that's another very much of a sort of he's a saint of mine, right? He is the one that I look to for being a person, who could change, who could adapt, who could make courageous decisions, right? In the midst of difficult, conflicting cultural and political moments. And if anything, you all know we're in a very difficult political moment, cultural moment. And I'm not sure where we're going. And then people will say, well, whose side are you on? And I just go, what is that about, right? Whose side am I on? I'm on the side of humanity, right? I don't go into my classroom and say, who's a conservative, who's a liberal? Okay, conservatives get out of my classroom, or liberals get out of my classroom. And I say that, well, we're all, sons and daughters of God, and so there's, so this whole the construction of our media culture, the construction of our political culture is so damaging to, I think, our communal body. And so I'm trying to negotiate that. And most of my, as you can imagine, most of my colleagues are firmly on a certain side. And so there's really no room for even dialogue there. And I kind of wanted there to be, but it just isn't. So, as usual, I think perhaps the reason I relate to Dietrich Bonhoeffer is because he was an outsider. He was an outsider in his, in his family. When he went to New York in the early 1930s, he realized that the German church had accommodated itself to a foul and really, in the end, an evil ideology, that he had to break from it, that he had to find his own deep discipleship in Jesus Christ. The cost of discipleship, I'm sure some of you can relate to this. That great green book, The Cost of Discipleship, I should probably get that book out. But I read it when I was in, junior high school. And I just thought to myself, wow, okay, I will be a follower of Christ. I will die for Christ. This is what I believe. This is what I believe. And, and as I grew older, of course, that developed and changed and shifted, et cetera. But that kind of, reading, I went back and read a bit more about Bonhoeffer's journey. And his journey was one of constant conversion to a deepening into the holistic and universal Christ, right? And a Christ who said, you must stand against this injustice. And of course, the injustice that he was standing against was this foul German nationalism, and the Christian church, of course, in Germany had been subjected or had given itself to Hitler. And he made that courageous decision, basically, to step away. And why did he make that decision? Why did he make that decision? There's a wonderful book that I don't know. Of course, I love books. Bonhoeffer's Black Jesus. I don't know. Has anybody heard of that book? Oh, it's a must read. Yeah, I think you should get it. Reggie Williams, who's the assistant professor of Christian ethics at McCormick Seminary, went back, and what he did was, he's an African-American theologian, went back, what was the effect of Bonhoeffer's visit to New York in the early 1930s. It was dramatic. Why? In part because he got to know the Black church. It wasn't the white theologians, Niebuhr and others, who affected Bonhoeffer. It was the Black African-American community, who deeply spiritual, deeply embracing the problems of poverty, the problems of racism, the problems of basically of white racism, and it did one other thing, and this may be worth talking about. is that it caused Bonhoeffer to question his own German Protestantism and that relationship to the state. And this is where Bonhoeffer becomes a controversial and to some extent a hated figure in parts of the German church, because he turns his back on it. He basically calls out the Christian nationalism of the German church as a great sin. And this was something that was a conversion moment for him. So as he went deeper into Christ because of the African-American Christianity, or African-American church, he was confronted by this basically Christian nationalism that he must turn away from it. And, that was what it was, 1931. And then, of course, everything he did up until his death in 1945 was in part in reaction to this witness of the Black church in Harlem. And Reggie Williams' book is a beautiful portrayal and systematic kind of step-by-step understanding of how Bonhoeffer changed over time. So I continue to, so kind of getting back to myself, it's not about whether you're a liberal or conservative. I could care less. I think it's really about whose Lord will you serve? Right? Jesus, who is the one who goes to those who are the least, the last, and the lost, and is one with them and dies for them, and serves them and loves them, and turns away from the structures of power that would allow him to survive or to become successful, right? But instead, he turns and serves the poor, the least, the outsider, the one who no one else loves. So for me, as a Christian, when I go back to Bonhoeffer, when I go back to this whole discipleship journey of mine, it's a strange trip. I guess that's what I want to say. Anyway, is that good, Ben? Or is that any?
That's awesome. We'll take an intermission time for comments and questions if you want. And I'm sure there's more there. I want that
sure.
Your little throwaway comment about family and your new family, and we can spend some time on that later too. But I'm impressed. More and more I hear this from older people and smart people and deeply spiritual people, like more layers of conversion, going deeper into the faith and less influenced by the culture. I think we could see, and other people can comment too.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is the impact of my wife's family has been profound, because she has three brothers. One's a lawyer, works with the poor in Walla Walla. And then she has two other brothers who are ER docs who also serve overseas with Christian organizations. A father who just went to Ukraine as a part of Franklin Graham's group. You know, and I don't necessarily, frankly, agree with Graham's politics either, but he does good work. You're right. And so very, you know, meant a family who lives their faith in I would say a kind of revolutionary way. And of course, my wife, you know, who has her own deep spiritual walk with Jesus as well. And that has been deeply, that was a choice of mine, you know, and a sense of, you know, as you all know, the people that you choose to be with have big effects on you. I'm a sociologist, so I know that, you know, despite your mind, where your body is will be how it becomes. And so I chose a family which I respected and wanted to be like, really. And, you know, I think that's really a God, you know, that's God's movement in my life. That I would be at a restaurant served by a woman exactly 9 months after my first wife died. And I was at a bar by myself. It was the first time I had gone out to a restaurant after the death of my wife. And she started serving me, and I texted this is a true story. I texted my friend, I said, hey, this really attractive woman is serving me. What do I do? You know, I haven't dated in 30 years. And he said, get off your text and talk to her. And so I did. I looked at her. I said, when do you get off tonight? And she said, in about an hour. And I said, oh, great. Okay. And we talked for 3 hours. And that was it. That was it.
See, that's a different spin on your original story of meeting your current wife in a bar.
Is it? Yeah.
Both true. Different.
Yeah, I
Both
guess so.
true. But the image that comes to one's mind when you say that you meet your wife in a bar is can have different images.
It was a bar. I mean, it was a restaurant, but in the bar. Okay.
So something you said about yourself and Bonhoeffer. I described my own change and conversion. Marrying my wife, who was in a different church, and suddenly having to let go of all my old, preconceived notions and all the stupid things, the church I grew up in would say about that church, and kind of start listening and learning. It's kind of like traveling to a foreign country, right? And here Bonhoeffer did both, right? Where all you've seen is the media, and we know all they show is sort of the scandalous things about somewhere. And you realize actually there's a lot of good people here, and they're living their daily life, and they're doing their, people things. And what I've heard about them is like maybe true, but it's only 1% of the reality, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but when we did the research on evangelicals, is nobody knows what they do. They don't, it's not recorded. Liberals tend to flout their service. Evangelicals tend to do their service and no one knows that they're doing it. And unless you're a weirdo like me, who does this in-depth research, no one would know what they were doing. So if you read my book, Evangelicals versus Liberals, we actually numerically count what they do. And then I do the same thing in the megachurch book, High on God. And of course, megachurches have a bad name now these days, I suppose. But when we actually did the empirical work, these megachurches, especially in cities in particular, were doing enormous amounts of good, both for families, but also for the poor, for the outcast, for all the things the Bible talks about. But nobody knows about it, except weirdos like me who actually tracked it down. Anyway, yeah.
Jim, would
Dan,
you
go ahead.
Oh, sorry,
Dan
Dan,
had his hand up.
Go ahead, Dan. I didn't see your hand.
Let me unmute myself. Jim, thanks for being with us again this morning. It's great to have you here.
Yeah.
In the earlier comments, I think you do some teaching or you've written a book or something on a life worth living. Do I get that right?
You know, I've done a class on a life worth living for 4 or 5 years at the UW. And that was, again, that was a kind of response to my life, really. And it's kind of a culmination of my interest in helping young people to discover what they really love and do what they really love in the world. Okay. And at this moment, I mean, we just got done with I think my 4th or 5th time I've taught the course. And I have 20 pages of single-spaced notes and a document basically recording their experience in the course. And it's pretty extraordinary. But I don't want to be really honest with you all, not that I was lying before. But I call it Religion 101, A Life Worth Living. And I'm not sure what I'm doing in there. Now, I probably can't say that to anyone but you all. But I basically try to create a pathway where they discover what they love about themselves, their tools, their gifts, their gifting, how to, I have them go into the wilderness. I have them do a service opportunity. I have them read books, various books, When Breath Becomes Air, and other books that are these powerful kind of witnesses of individuals doing great work in their communities. Frankel's book, of course, and some others. And then another book on how to design your life and how to take your passions basically into the world. But I don't call it Christian. I use Christian resources. Mm-hmm. So I'm really at this point, I've got $25,000 from Murdock, and I'm looking for some other money for the next 2 years to actually rethink what I'm doing and then write a book on it and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
So a question. I find myself kind of amazingly so in places where I'm interacting with a lot of younger people. And invariably the conversation is about me and my truth, your truth. not necessarily selfish, but certainly I'm the center of my universe. That's about the best way I can explain it. Yeah, a couple of days ago, I saw a post on LinkedIn where somebody in my feed, reacted, and so I saw it. And it was of a woman who's probably 40, had in her arms a small child, and explaining the virtues of her ability to choose, and how that ability she's now a member of the C-suite in some organization, and how great that is. And it was she probably used the me, and my 10 times in a 30-word post. Is that mindset consistent with the concept of a life worth living?
Yeah, that's a great question. I make it really clear that, I kind of hold up heroes, right? And these heroes could be Bonhoeffer, could be Paul Kalanithi, who was a great Stanford surgeon and died right in the midst of his doing his final work before he was going to start his career, and decided to have a child with his wife. Not a selfish act, but an act of a gifting really to his wife. And then, of course, Frankel, it basically survives because he served others, because he had a mission outside himself. And then the students also have to go out and actually serve somebody. My experience with young people, Daniel, is more confusion, and solipsism, which is not helpful.
What's solipsism?
Just basically self-obsessed and screen obsessed. And so that my life is my screen. And so, we try to get him. So I'll give you another example. I had a kid, I don't think he'd ever been outside into a forest, And this young person, she describes going into this forest, and she was petrified. It was a trail, and she got into it, and she began to kind of open up. And she said, and then she began to realize, oh my God, this is one of the most powerful experiences of my life. By the time she got to the top of the ridge, which she was in tears, in joy, having actually experienced this kind of transcendent experience in her life. So the other thing that we do is we say the only way you're going to get a job is by actually getting to know people. So they have to list 10 or 20 people that they want to get to know and interview. So then I get speakers in to talk each week, to talk about, what makes their life worth living, right? And many are religious in one form or another. My own daughter came. My daughter's 26 now, 3 years sober, y'all. Okay. Dad had no idea. I had no idea. And she came out, and of course I was shocked, and I didn't know. But very powerful. It goes to is it, you know, doing the program, and she comes in and you couldn't hear a pin drop in the room. So drugs and alcohol, massive abuse going on. I would just say, Daniel, that our kids are really lost, and they suffocate that lostness with being online, you know, following people online, wasting their lives, or drugs and alcohol, or sex. You know, and so, you know, yeah. So what am I trying to do? It's basically save them before they fall off the cliff. Yeah, no, are we in a troubled time? Yes. Should we reach out to these young people? Oh my God. Yes. And so that's, you know, I don't say I'm trying to save you, but that's basically what I'm trying to do. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, beautifully so. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
So
blessings on your daughter as well.
Oh yeah, thank
Powerful.
you very much. Very powerful.
Jim, I so appreciate your transparency. Sorry, there's some kind of a military helicopter, I think, landing in my backyard. um, how do you navigate, kind of a two-part question, how do you navigate this situation that you shared with these students coming into your class and saying, you know, you need to kick the liberals out, or you need to kick the conservatives out, and then what? Maybe not so much how you navigate it. You kind of shared that, but that you don't obviously kick out anybody. But do you find that by the end of the quarter that there is any kind of movement in terms of relationally speaking, and not necessarily changing their theological positions, but in terms of engaging one another, this what you said is very difficult to navigate with other professors.
To some extent, I kind of let the chips fall where they may. And like I said, when I read those 20 pages, single spaced, and I look at lives transformed, and I'm trying to figure out, you know, honestly, I'm trying to figure out, like, what am I doing in this class? And I'm not quite sure yet. So I you know, this is not a good answer. I don't know yet. I don't really know what I'm doing, and I kind of feel called to do it. And so that's kind of why I'm trying to figure it out. So I know this is not a good answer. I'm not.
Well, actually, I find it somewhat refreshing of an answer, because I think sometimes as people on a faith journey, we feel like we need to have it figured out. And the reality is that often we don't.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And so I know that maybe from a scholarly, intellectual standpoint, you're supposed to have things figured out, but I think it's a refreshing place, especially if we consider the vastness and the greatness of God, that we are on many levels not ever going to be able to figure it out. And we should perhaps be more alarmed if we think that we do.
You know, the other image that comes to mind is that great image of Catcher in the Rye, trying to stop people from, you know, going over the cliff, catching people. Sometimes I think I'm doing that. You can see it. You can see there's a lot of distress. This is a distressed culture, y'all. And you know, occasionally, of course, I'm sure you guys have been watching the latest news. There is no direction from the top. What are students or young people supposed to take away from this mess? Who are our heroes? So, you know, I'm trying to provide heroes with integrity, who think not just about themselves, but think about others. You know, and that includes religious types, and to give them kind of a notion that, hey, there's really cool Christians out there, and cool Muslims, cool Hindus, you know, people who are people of the faith. Hey, and then I say to myself, okay, then you know what I say? I say, hey, being a family, having a family is so divine. You know, and I said, and I at one point I described, you know, we have our 1-year-old in bed with us, basically. And every once in a while, I just reach over my hand to touch her skin. I don't know if you all remember this, but when you touch the skin of a 9-month-old, 10-month-old baby, there's something there that's so divine, of just like this, she is from God. And, you know, that's God's gift. And, you know, we're just stewards. And I said that to the, you know, I've said that to the class, because I'm not going to tell them that they shouldn't abort their babies, but I am going to tell them I have 4 children, and it is such a blessing. It is like God's gift to me. So instead of, you know, being negative nanny, I guess I try to play a positive role. You know, life is beautiful. Family is delicate, difficult, delightful, delectable, divine, right? Difficult, you know, full of some tensions. And but that's kind of where I'm at. You know, maybe, yeah, I don't know if that answers these questions, but
What you just said is different than saying, I don't know what I'm doing. It's kind of like, you know, I met my wife in a bar, or she was my, you know, waitress in a restaurant. It's like, you know what you're doing, you don't know maybe how you're doing it, or it wasn't your plan, it was God's plan there too. Moving through you, you see what's happening. But
yeah,
it'd be interesting if this Murdock gift let you actually intentionally format it, and others could duplicate it, etc. But it's so meaningful. We went through a 2-year period a couple years back where 2 of my son's friends killed themselves, and it just devastating, you know, like 20-year-olds with everything to live for. I just, you know, it's hard to fathom what you're talking about, how lost they are.
Alan has his hand raised.
Yeah, Alan, you want to
go ahead, brother? Don't be shy.
Jim, I've been listening intently, and I'm grateful that I've been able to just kind of soak it up, and I'm just trying to process. And some of the things that come to my mind on your description of your classroom and the young ones in your classroom, which is disheartening, but it's reality. It's reality, and kind of this key around lack of hope. I just go back to 2 or 3 weeks ago when we had the 17th Ave house, and we had those young people talk, and there was hope galore, and enthusiasm and excitement, and desire to help others. I mean, it was a very, very different atmosphere in the seventh, and I was participating from the Zoom room. I'm in Minneapolis, and I'm 1,900 miles away.
Yeah.
And I could feel it. I could feel it. So I just am encouraged that we have those guys and the gals that are in the other houses on campus, and there might be some reach out, because the lack of hope that you described in your classroom does not need to be there, but it's a reality. And I just share that with the group. The other thing came to my mind. I just love to just put out there just as a thought, and just my thought, because you shared so much with us this morning, Jim. With regard to living a life for Jesus and what that means, I encourage everybody. Our own Doug Burley wrote this book just in the last year. It's less than a year on the shelf, and it's a fabulous book around what it means to truly live a calling for Jesus. And for those of us that don't know him, Doug is in his late 70s now, and he's been in small groups and one-on-one conversations with people from all over the world, from different classes, from different socioeconomic backgrounds, political persuasions, conservatives, liberals, Democrats, Republicans, white, black, Asian, you name it. He's been with them all.
Ukrainians and Russians.
You got it. And
Muslims,
I mean,
Hindus.
But the point here is, when he comes into conversation with people one-on-one, sometimes small groups, the class is never brought up. I haven't seen, and he's talked to Congress people for 40 years in Washington, D.C. Yet he never brings up a social class, a social group. He just talks to the individual. And it's so refreshing, because that's what Jesus wants of us. He just wants us. That's it. And he doesn't want whatever class we might be associated with. He just wants us. So anyway, it's a fabulous book, you guys. And it was really good for me to read through it just in the past few months. And a side note, I think coming up on the 21st here in about 3 weeks, we have Chris Halverson coming, and he is now, for lack of a better word, and Christopher Stone, you know who he is, I think. He is, amongst other things, he's the current caretaker of the Cedars in Washington, D.C., he and his wife. And don't miss it. July 21st. Don't miss it, guys.
Actually, Alan, Christopher says he was the chaplain for Congress.
He was. Actually, his dad was. But and I think he was for a while too. But his Chris Halverson is 76, 75, 76. His dad knew Abram Brady very well. Okay, and we have an Abram Brady audio tape that he sent me just 2 days ago. That was well done. So, and Chris met him as a young man. Chris met Abram Brady as a young man too. So anyway, there's a lot of tie in here with just one-on-one with people, irrespective of class, that I just love, because I think classes can take us down a wrong pathway so many times.
While we have still like 10 minutes, anybody that's been quiet here, I'll be like the teacher right here looking at the back of the classroom.
Big Jack
Jerry,
has his
Mitch,
hand up.
Randy, Richard, Jack's.
Yeah. Can I blurt, Binks? Thanks.
Blurt away.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I read your bio and I read this inspiring 17 rules. I'd like to hear a few of the rules. I would think that this would be one of the more inspiring, positive things that a student could do. You're at the University of Washington. Do I have that right? Or are you somewhere else?
University of Washington, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine something more positive than life worth living. let me just say this. I'm going to ask you, I like a few of the rules because they've got to be incredibly wholesome rules. But if you don't know what you're doing, you're connecting with me and you're connecting with us and you're definitely connecting with them. And sometimes connection alone, would you not agree? I'd always like to ask a question, not make a statement here when we've got a good speaker, but would you not agree that connection alone gives people some sense of otherness and some sense of thinking outside their constrained self-perceptions? And would you not agree that that alone might give them a sense of more expansive life?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no. Yeah, I'm totally with you. I guess what I'm saying, and I'm just being fully honest and transparent with you all. And that is, I just haven't had time to really step back. I've seen all the glory of it and the glory of the responses of students to the course. I just haven't fully had time to, I don't know, sort of structure, like, what are you doing, Jim? You know what I mean? So which is kind of strange, I suppose, in some sense, but I just haven't had time to do it because I'm doing a lot of different things. Do you really want to hear
I don't want to hear that. You don't need to give, I don't want to bore you and have you, or put you in a corner and have you tell me all, but I read it last night. I thought, well, I want to know a couple of the rules.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I'll give you some. Make yourself vulnerable. I think students in my courses must experience their vulnerability. I had one student, African-American student, woman who could barely get out of her room. She was so shy, but she desperately wanted to. And she came to me and she was so shy, she could barely talk to me. But I could tell she's a beautiful human being. And I just tried to bring her out. And it's one of those, to become a mentor, know, bless, and send, right? We know that. Bless these children, know them, and then send them out. Number 3, suffering and death are the ultimate invitation to life. My wife's death, while tragic, while horrible, terrible. I mean, just it was an invitation to a new life, changed my life. Plan like an accountant, but be ready to jump, right? You know what I'm talking about. Sometimes Jesus says, hey, go to Ukraine. That's not a part of being safe. Number 5, beware of what I love this word, cathectu. You will become it. Cathect is the great Latin word to set up home. Wherever you set up home, like, some people set up home with pornography now. I mean, a lot of people are doing that, especially, young people. Beware of it, because that's what you'll become. Love your friends. I really try to love my friends. I mean, that's the power of words. Your words can speak life and death to people. And I try to be careful in my class because I know that they're listening. Be courageous. Man, we need courage today, right? To take heart, to be it, to feel your heart and to work and to heart. Do something that makes you feel uncomfortable. Oh, like confess your secrets. Jump into a cauldron of cold ocean water. Oh, be baptized in that water. Love as if it's your last day. Man, I'm gonna joke up, you guys. I'm not that, I probably look young, but I'm not that young. And the years are ticking off, right? And I think about that now. I only have so many years left to love my family.
Jim, it's always remarkable to hear someone in the levels of reflection that you bring this morning, from your age, from your historical context, how you've lived, who you've loved, particularly this precious, apparently new child in your world, and also promote the intersection of conversation of the polarities that we all are certainly aware of in one form or another. In your comments earlier, you referenced liberals flout and evangelical or conservative people tend to do, or more quiet. I'd like to have you expand a bit more about that generalization of those polarities.
Well, yeah, you're talking about evangelicals and liberals. Yeah, I don't know. That's the research show. The liberals tended to tell everybody what they did. Evangelicals, we didn't know what they were doing because they didn't talk about it. And I thought that was powerful. And I think that's more Jesus-like, to be straightforward about it. Yeah, so I learned a lot. Learned a lot about this kind of these two different tribes of Christians. Obviously, evangelicals aren't perfect, but liberals tend to flout their piety.
Is there a judgment when you use that language?
It was pure observation, in the sense that this is what we found in the data. So yeah, that's what we found. And liberals assume that evangelicals weren't doing much. Well, in part, they assumed that because no one knew what they were doing. But when you actually, I'm a sociologist too. I'm not just a Christian or a theologian. We counted how much they did. It was overwhelming how much, if you think about good done, caring for, clothing given, houses painted, poor people served. There was no comparison. So yeah, the judgment, I like being a sociologist because you can just say, hey, this is the data. Look at the data. And then, it when you do the data, it transformed me. Anyway, do you want the other overcomer? Okay, here we go. Be courageous. Do something that makes you feel uncomfortable. Confess secrets. Forgiveness changes your life. Be overcomers. Make a better story. Don't repeat your past. Be the answer on the tip of everyone's tongue. Immerse yourself in nature once a week. Go serve somebody in need. see suffering and death as a gift. Stephen Colbert said this, because all things are of God. The one who gives is also the one who takes away. And then finally, for me, the last one is, why Jesus? And then I say, you can feel his goodness, you can see his beauty. You can put your heart and mind against his truth and with his truth. So anyway, that's kind of my, yeah. That's it, you guys. That's all I got.
How long have you been at the UW now?
Wow. 20, about 25 years. I mean, good grief. I was an undergraduate there, so maybe all my whole life.
Awesome. I'm going to watch our time, stop the recording, have a little prayer, pray us out, and then we can stay after class and chat if you want to.
Could I make a quick comment, please?
Perry, yes, sir.
I have the blessing of doing a lot of studying at Seattle Pacific University, and I'm amazed at the contrast of those students who are together. I mean, they're you can even just look at them and see the difference between them and kids who go to, like, the University of Washington. The SPU kids have a purpose. They're happy. They're out of themselves. It's just amazing to me. Would you have any comments on that?
I would just say amen. They have a purpose. A life worth living is clearly a life that has a purpose. And our culture makes you your own purpose. And it's kind of basically it's a form of narcissism. And it's not attractive. Who wants to be around a person like that? Right?
Yes.
Now, it's not like, okay, so it's not like SBU students are all perfect.
No.
And there's plenty of Christians at the UW and great kids, and they're amazing kids. I mean, I love my students. But that's partly what my class is about, is, hey, find something bigger than yourself. I mean, and that's another way to round this off is, wow, give yourself to something bigger, better than, and more powerful than yourself. You guys all know that. And when that happens, life springs forth. And you go, oh yeah, there we go. So yeah, it's cool. And there's some kind of funny Christians too. Christians aren't perfect, but anyway,
Buildings
yeah.
full of sinners. Real quick before the prayer, when you said that before, I wrote it down. Students being self-absorbed, self-obsessed, solipsism. Got a new word today. Reminded me of an event I went to. Actually, it was held at SPU by chance, but it was a faith and work conference. It had a British poet and a Canadian singer-songwriter together, Malcolm Goit, and this, I forget the Canadian singer-songwriter, who grew up son of a pastor, and his father was a chaplain at a federal penitentiary, and that's where he learned music. He would go in on Saturdays, and his dad let him hang out with the inmates, who his dad let them use his chaplain area for music practice, and he just learned from the best of the best in prison. But both of them said something happened to poetry and music along the way in the modern era that totally became self-absorbed. And that what you can just see, the art is lacking something when you're not writing, painting, singing about anything other than your own reflection in a broken mirror and shards of glass. And like they both were like, yeah, it's so, you know, refreshing to write and sing about something other than yourself.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Boom.
Well, thanks you guys for letting me go on.
Christopher, would you like to give us a little blessing and pray over Jim's work and our life and say a prayer for Michael Lee, who just showed up?
Michael, hey!
Did I miss it? Oh my gosh.
We recorded it, so you'll get to hear it.
Good.
And it's worth a listen.
Yeah.
Actually,
well,
on
I
that
just
note,
woke up. I'm still recovering from an